Good morning. Today, my topic is the two nation theory. There are two distinct communities in India, and there is a vast divide between the two. One is the affluent group that talks of good eateries, malls, cinema theaters, and good living. Then there is this vast community which is poor and lives in villages and in the streets and slums of urban India. The government of the day belongs to this affluent group. And so were all the previous governments. They catered mostly to the affluent group, this affluent society. The laws, rules are made to benefit them. Whereas they put so many conditions, spokes for the poverty ridden society that they do not benefit anything from it. This orphan group is the vast majority that lives in villages and have been ignored by successive governments. The two genera talk differently, they have different priorities, different ways of life. You can see the spectacle when on one side of the same city, people travel in cars, live in bungalows, expensive apartments, and have a lifestyle that is comparable with communities of advanced countries. Whereas one group talks of daily bread, daily wages, the other group talks about their next tourist destination. There is so much between the two communities. It's like an invisible wall which separates them. Living on minimum wages with which hardly they can make ends meet. There is hardly any provision to safeguard them against a bad season like a drought or floods which spoil crops. Many farmers have committed suicide when crops have failed and the government ignored them, giving them only hopes and promises. It is a separate India within India. It's this small minority, a handful of affluent men who run this country. It is like an island of affluent men surrounded by seas of malnourished children, young and old. And there are very few jobs available for these people. They are the ones that you will find on the streets whenever any demonstrations by political parties take place. They are the ones whom politicians and godmen hire and use them to vent their anger against the government by inciting them to loot and damage public property on roadsides. You will find that they are mostly youth who have no jobs and whom the affluent society does not care. They run small businesses, cycle shops, cigarette shops, domestic help, street hawkers selling small artifacts on streets, or beg at the traffic signals. They don't get proper schooling. There are only a few government schools where free education is available. The rest of the schools are privately owned and whose school fees this poverty ridden society cannot pay. The situation in the villages is grim. With the wayward weather, not much yield of crops is expected. The efforts of farmers many a times goes waste. Sometimes the drought can continue for years, making the farmers penniless over a period of time. They lose their strength even to raise their voice against a government that has turned a blind eye towards them. With no means to support the family and the requirements of the family ever mounting. They commit suicides. Is the government wary of the requirements? Are they concerned about the plight of these farmers? Is the government responsible or works only for the affluent class? There are no representatives for the silent majority of poor farmers. The government representatives from the parliament and state assemblies also belong to this affluent class, who neither understand their grievances, their issues, problems, nor voice them in public forums. Promises are made by successive governments regarding providing insurance cover for failed crops, for getting a better price for their crops. But they are mostly promises. Claims are made by successive governments of what they have done for the poor, but only a handful at most benefit from it. There are different rules for this society, one for the upper class and the other for this downtrodden. A corrupt politician or a government official can access money and he'll be seen as a blessed one, a chosen one. Even if he's caught, he can find ways to come out. He would have swindled millions, but still he is protected by the elite society. But on the other hand, we have a downtrodden society where even a petty theft is considered monstrous and the culprit is beaten up by the public or by the police, kept in custody without food and clothes or proper hearing for days. There are rules, laws that provides an affluent society to get loans. A poor villager cannot get access to loans, even small amounts. He has to mortgage his land and will require guarantors. He is bereft of such facilities provided by society. This poverty leads them to migrate to other states and countries. Here also they are not safe. They are mistreated and become victims of extortion money, rapes and murders. Here also the government ignores their plight. An aircraft accident makes news and analysis for days, whereas so many bus and boat and pedestrian accidents, where hundreds die, are not reported and make no news. Often foreign tourists who come here are surprised by the affluence on one side and the mud, squalor and pathetic conditions of living on the other. How can governments ignore the majority? How can the majority be fooled by the elected government of the day? The annual budget brings sops to government employees, tax rebates to government, to higher income groups. What do they do for the common man? They are largely ignored. What sops is there for the farmer, the daily wager? What about protecting their produce? For example, crop insurance. Will the government step in to control prices for their produce? What about subsidies for motors, pumps, tractors, agricultural equipment? How can they provide better and free education to all villagers? How can they improve the roads so that the farm produce reaches cities? How can they stop the mass influx of people to cities and other states? Is it possible that we bring in laws which says that all new medical colleges, engineering colleges, science and arts colleges be constructed in villages alone for the next 10 years? All new factories be permitted to open and start only in villages? with the government providing access roads and cheaper electricity. Until our villages improve, we'll have lopsided development where only a few can eat and enjoy and the rest watch the others eat. Thank you.